Hey guys, my name is John. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new, I like to play with old bikes. And what we're going to do today is we're going to overhaul a 1978 Schwinn Volare. Now, in overhauling that bicycle, it's similar to probably 90% of the bikes that are out there. So if you have a bike, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, even some of the 90s bikes, this will be relevant to you. We are going to disassemble, overhaul, repack the bearings, and reassemble this 1978 Schwinn Volare. This video is about an hour and a half long. Now, if you want some bite-sized parts, you just keep coming back to this video, or parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 are listed in the description below. And should be a lot of fun, very relaxing. Don't fall asleep on me. But if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe, and look at my past videos. They don't age. I mean, they age really well. You can watch a 3-year-old video and still enjoy it. So, all right, with no further ado, let's get started. Now for a brief overview on this bicycle. A Schwinn Volare was built in Japan by Panasonic, and boy, they made a beautiful bike. Some people call it the baby Paramount. It had Reynolds 5-thru tubing and chrome drops, chrome fork blades, just beautiful chrome lugs and fork crown. Just a beautiful bike for its day. And my understanding, it was about $100 less than what a Schwinn Paramount would cost. Full Durace. I got some new hoods for that. And Durace brakes, cranks. Rear derailleur is a Shimano crane, which was the Durace of the day, if you will, and a Durace front derailleur. Let's get to work. Everybody does this a little differently. I like to start off by taking off the chain. While you're pushing out the rivet, make sure you don't go too far and push the rivet all the way out. So you got to take a feel for it. When it starts getting a little tougher, that's when I pull it out. Oh, this chain needs some work, boys and girls. It's dry. There you go. I probably could have pulled that pin a little bit more. It's the Shimano Uniglide chain. Great shape. Let's remove some wheels. Made my first mistake. I'd recommend doing the pedals first, because sometimes you need the chain hooked up to get the pedals off. It makes it a little bit easier. But I think I got lucky. If you're ever wondering which way your threads go on your pedals, put your wrench on. Over the top towards the back will always loosen. Over the top towards the front will always tighten, and that's true on both sides. Let's unhook some cables. I do plan on keeping these cables. They're in great shape. They're original. Add a plier to your list. Forgot about that. Take off the end there. These are pretty heavy duty braided cables. Now these brake cables are a little frayed. I think I might be able to just cut them here and be fine. I really would like to keep them. Let's remove some derailleurs. This one's a 6mm. Front derailleur is a 9mm. Now as you remove the stem, whoops, yep, 6mm. This one's pretty loose actually. Oh, this is gonna come right out. That was never properly lubricated. Look at that. Most stems have a wedge, and when you tighten down this wedge, this kind of pushes down, tightens it up within the steer tube. Sometimes it's an internal wedge, but either way, there's some kind of wedging. This should be lubricated. This never was, quite oddly. You could tell. It's probably never been taken out either since it was built. Sometimes you have to tap the top of this with a mallet to knock the wedge loose. The fact that I didn't have to kind of told me something. So yeah, wasn't in there very tight. The next step is removing the cranks in the bottom bracket. This is where a lot of people get intimidated, but it's actually quite easy. And I'm going to try to tell you every step and the things to look out for so you don't have any problems or create problems for yourself in the future. But it's really not that hard. The next tool we're going to use is a crank puller. Now, these pullers come with different threads. 90% of them use the same thread. Seriously. Suntour, Shimano, Campagnolo. You get into some of the French brands, you might need a special puller size. And if it doesn't go in smoothly, then you know you got the wrong one. But 90% of the time you get a park puller, it'll take care of business. First thing is remove the dust cap. This takes a 5mm. Look at that, it's not even tight. Yours might take a regular screwdriver. There you go. The steel one. Ready, looks brand new. 95% of the bikes either has a 14 or a 15mm bolt in here or a nut. Just put your wrench on it or your socket, and it has regular threads. In this case, they're not very tight. Sometimes they're very tight. Give it a spin, get it out of there. Also, do not forget to remove the washer if there is one. Take a good look inside. Make sure there's nothing other than the crank and the spindle. No washer. Now, as we know, these cranks are basically brand new. The threads are really clean. You might want to have to clean these out. Depends if you had a dust cap or not. And you see, I'm just going in clockwise as normal. It's going in very, very smooth. Make sure you're at least getting 5 or 6 threads in there when you can, because without that, when you use the puller, it'll pull the threads right out. Like that. Now that's pressed up against the spindle. Yeah, this one's like butter. Too easy. Sometimes you got to work at that a little bit. Give it a little pressure. Now you can see here that when you take that crank off, a lot of hidden dirt you can get out. This one here is pretty smooth. A little dry, but smooth. Once again, I think this bike has no miles on it. This is a Japanese bike, therefore it has an English threaded bottom bracket. An English threaded bottom bracket, the non-drive side, which is this side here, has a right-handed thread. Counterclockwise, we'll remove the lock ring. Oh no, I don't have the right tool, but guys, a ring spanner, or a pin spanner, I should say. This one's green. Park has a red one, which probably fits better. This is a little large, but actually it does work because this cup is actually fairly loose. Once again, counterclockwise. If you don't have a spanner, you could put try to use a Phillips or something in a punch. I don't recommend it, but you can do it if you don't want to buy a spanner. Let's see what it looks like, guys. Let's see. Huh, does not look bad. Doesn't look even dry. Black, it's black. Now this comes out. You got your spindle and your bottom bracket sheath. This keeps dust and everything from coming down and getting into your grease. So we have our Park Fix Cup tool. We're going to put that on. Now, when you put a lot of pressure on this to loosen it, the wrench could slip off. I hate that. So here we go. We got this bolt, massive bolt, and we're going to put that through with a washer. Put the washer on the other side, and your nut. We're going to hand tighten this to be actually fairly snug. This is English threading, which means on the drive side, you're going to have a left-handed thread. So to remove it, we are going to go clockwise. Here we go. Let's give it a try. Ready? That wasn't too tight. Here we go. It's loose now. We get rid of this bolt and go the rest of the way. Yeah, now it's moving pretty easily. That grease is a little thick. As you can see, I have the wrenches close together, so you can just squeeze them and pop it loose. Just like that. While you're removing your top cup, be careful, you might have loose ball bearings. I know these were going to be caged, I wasn't worried. If they're loose, they're all going to fall to the ground, so make sure you accommodate for that with a bucket or box or something. Yep, pretty cruddy. Hey guys, let me take a moment to ask you to subscribe. If this is the kind of content you like, hit the subscribe button and that little ring-a-ding bell that just lets you know I posted a video, and you'll see next oncoming videos. We're going to see this video is going to be done in a few parts. It's the best way for you to be notified that the next video is up. I'm going to take off this bottom bracket cable guide just so it's easier to clean. Now, with the exception of the seat and seat post, we pretty much have everything off the bike. I'm going to keep the shifters on. They're functioning great. There's no point in putting any stress on that strap. So I'm going to clean up the cups, flush out the bottom bracket a little bit, clean off the frame, and then we'll start reassembly. I would say if the grease is really thick here, use some clean streak or some degreaser, but honestly, this is coming off so easily. I'd rather not use the chemicals if I don't have to. Well, I told you I was going to clean out the bottom bracket, but look at this. It's like brand new from the factory. What I would do if I were you guys is take some either a lubricant like a Tri-Flow or even a degreaser, get it in there, take a towel, wipe it out, just make sure they're cleaned up. Oh, this thing's pretty. Can't believe this thing's a 78. Just ridiculous. For those of you that are new with this process, I'd recommend laying everything out on your table the same way, in the same manner you took it off. So, you know, obviously this is first. You should have a little washer. And this one here has a little key washer. Then you're going to have the outer plate. Sometimes, let's pull this off. Sometimes there's an inner plate. This one has one. Sometimes it's one piece. Sometimes there's two. And here's that inner plate. Before you put it down, make sure it's flat and you can use it each way. I'm going to put it with the bottom facing the ground. Check the other side. Sometimes there's a plate there, but not in this case. There should be a washer. Yep. The Derailleur, it's got a little washer. There you go. Sure glad I'm taking these apart. I'm telling you what, they're dirtier than I thought. Look, this is flat. Looks like it's universal. You could put it on either way. This here is actually just some old grease. You could tell. Let's get rid of that. And be really thorough. I'm not going to show all of it, but be really thorough getting all that crud out of there. I just love the detail of these old parts. Now for reassembly, put a little bit of light oil on this washer, a smidge of grease on the inside of the shifter on both sides. Now if you have a Derailleur shifter, keep in mind you have this little pin. The little pin is essential. Don't lose it. It will fall out, as I just learned. And when you put that on, the pin limits the shifter from going too far down. And if you remember, we got our inner plate. I have a little bit of grease on each side of that. Then we have our inner plate here, or outer plate. Then we have our outer plate. And we put this on. We got that little pin there. See that little pin? Let's see if we get close up. The little pin right there on the edge near my thumb. That goes into a hole that's in this top plate. So when we get close, that creates friction. So we get close, it's kind of tricky. You got to key it in. Let's see if I think it's on the top there. Here we go. I'm going to key it in. Now I'm going to tighten it. This is a tricky shifter. Perfect. Well, I'm excited now, guys. It's time to reassemble this thing. Yeah, let's start by putting a fork on and overhauling the headset. So let's clean this thing up. You know, back when I worked in a shop in the 80s, all the top line bikes we had on the floor, we were a Schwinn store. I started in 1982. We're all Japanese made Schwinns. I didn't think twice of it. I just thought that was pretty normal. Turns out it wasn't. You know, I learned that throughout the 70s that Raleighs were made by Raleigh. Rosses were made by Ross. Fujis were made by Fuji. Why are these Schwinns made in Japan? And then I had a great talk with Richard Schwinn. I did an interview with him about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago. You could check that out. It's more about the Waterford brand than it was a Schwinn brand. But I learned something. I learned that Schwinn used to have, you know, over 100 distributors, well over 100. So they had no control over the distribution network. Well, there's no price integrity or anything. You know, Joe from Joe's Heating and Plumbing could be a Schwinn distributor. Not good for the brand. You know, non-bike shops were putting these things together. So they took control without getting into the detail. They dropped all of their suppliers and they opened up their own distribution centers. Well, out of those over 100 distributors, I think maybe, I forgot how many it was, maybe I'm going to guess 20 or 30 were actually serious bike distributors. They needed other brands to sell. So Schwinn, in a sense, created their own competition. That's when you saw all the French bikes come in the 70s. You had your Motorbacans, Peugeots, Genet, you know, you name it. All the Japanese, you know, Fuji came in, Centurion, all these good bikes. Well, guess what? Schwinn had nothing to compete with them. Most of the Schwinn bikes were made in Chicago, and they were fillet brazed. They were heavy, kind of like the Schwinn Super Sport here. Beautifully done, very high quality, but very heavy. And they needed to compete. They didn't have enough capacity to do the lug frames in-house. Even when Schwinn couldn't build enough Paramounts, they went to a gentleman named Don Mainland to build more out of Wisconsin. So they couldn't produce enough lug frames. They had to compete. They went to Japan. They actually went to Panasonic, and that's where these bikes were born. The first one, I believe, is the Schwinn World Voyager, like my orange one here. This is a 73, and beautiful bike. You see chrome lugs again. So with the World Voyager, then after the World Voyager, you know, the Voyager 2, the Latour, bikes like that came out, and they were lightweight. The one you just saw was actually the same exact bike as a Panasonic. I mean, all the way down, every spec was the same, with the exception that Panasonic had more chrome on the seat stays. So at the time, you know, Schwinns were, you know, $375, $450, that range. And they wanted other bikes to compete. So this bike came out in 77. Now this one's a 78. And
I don't know, some people call it the baby Paramount because it had Reynolds tubes, it had the chrome lugs, it had the more inexpensive but high quality, well-performing Derailleur components. Make sure you put the cage down on this particular one. And you go. Cage down again on this particular one. So back when I first started working at a shop, there's a gentleman named Jerry Neneve. Hopefully he's watching today. Really admired him, great godly man. And he was a good mentor. And he had a Voyager that was red with chrome lugs. I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing in the world. Anything with chrome lugs really turned me on. Here we go. So I was bound and determined to get one. I ended up with the chrome Voyager from 1982. Now this is like adjusting any bearing. You want it to be as tight as you can without it hanging up. Let's do this. One on the top, one on the bottom. We're going to tighten them together just gently. Feels pretty good, but I'm going to make that final adjustment a little bit later with the front wheel on. Some people don't like to do that, but this bike's already broken in, so it'll work out just fine. Hey, let's start the bottom bracket. So you got your fixed cup that goes on the drive side, and your bearing. Adjustable cup and your bearing. Your bottom bracket sheath goes in the middle, and your lock ring. Before I use a degreaser, I knocked the loose grease out of it. No point in clogging all that up. Get it nice and clean. You're not gonna see me polish this whole thing, but get the grease out of it first. If you're wondering, I'm using Clean Streak, White Lightning it's called. Great stuff. So normally I like to collect bikes that were built by the companies that said that they built them. And the only exceptions I have, I mean, there's few, but the Schwinn's are the main ones. I really like them. I got a few. I got a Super Sport SP, Voyager, the Volare, and I'd love to have one of these in my size. So if you guys have one, let me know. And it's gonna be hard to get rid of this one. This one's like brand new. While assembling this, put some grease in the cup, spread it around. You can be fairly generous, but you don't have to go too much into it. You don't have to have too much. But I like it to be a little clumpy around the bearing. Might even put some on top of the bearing. Now, every time I overhaul a bottom bracket, everyone says I'm putting the bearings in wrong. Just so you know, there's two different kinds of bearings. This is a Campagnolo, and also some of the newer Durace looks similar. Your cage is bowed, and you can see the cage is on the outside. The cage is here. Now, you can see this bearing. This one goes cage up. And then when you put your spindle in there, it rolls on these bearings. Campagnolo, and this style bearing, is just the opposite. As you can see, your spindle would rub right on top of that. You don't want that. So this one goes cage down. Now you could also use loose ball bearings, usually a 1/4 inch, sometimes not. So pay attention to what you're taking out before you put new ones in. So let's put some grease on here. And we go just a tiny bit more. Some might think that I'm using too much, but you know, I love you guys, but I try not to care too much. I've been doing this for what other people think. I've been doing this for, oh my gosh, 45 years. And I never had a bike fail or fall apart on me. I must be doing something right. There we go. And the bearing will spread that around. There we go. Ding, 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 ding. Let's get this baby installed. I got a little grease on my fingers here. I'm gonna make sure there's some on the cups. The guy that takes this apart next will thank you, or the gal. A little bit of lubricant as well on the threads. Once again, English threads. So I'm going to turn it clockwise until I hear a click, and then I go backwards. Don't force it, guys. Whatever you do, don't force these cups in. Make sure that the threads catch properly, because if not, you could ruin the bottom bracket. Or at the very least, you'll have to rechase it with a new tap. I want this to be really tight, so I'm going to put my bolt back in with the washers so it doesn't slip off. Stepping in front of it, I get a good grasp. And this has got to be a good three grunts, all right? You want that tight. If that's not tight, it'll come unraveled while you're riding. That's no fun. It's happened to me once, just once. Now, the idea behind the bottom bracket sheath is it goes in like this and creates a seal. So put that in. Should center itself. Now, here's my bottom bracket spindle. It's all nice and clean. One end is longer than the other. That's the drive side. Now, before you put it back in, inspect it for pits. This thing really has almost no miles on it, and there's no pits right here on the bearing surface. If it's really pitted, consider putting a new bottom bracket or at least a new spindle in. Once again, make sure there's a little bit of grease on your threads. This is a right-handed thread, should go right in. Which it does, man. It's like butter. When you're making your final adjustment, snug it up, back it off. Put your lock ring on. You want the spindle to turn freely and smoothly, but you don't want there to be free play. Hear that? So we're actually going to snug the bottom a little bit, and then we're going to lock the lock ring. Keep in mind, when you lock down this lock ring, it'll pull the cup out slightly and loosen the bearing, just slightly. This will take some trial and error, but eventually you'll get it nice and smooth. Right now, I think we're in good shape. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my greasy fingers, I'll rub them on the spindles. As you can see, there's not a lot of grease on there. It's just wet. Some people don't like that. Some people like to keep it dry. I ain't going to argue with you. This is the way I like to do it. It's worked for years. Next, we're going to install the cranks. This is a first generation Derailleur crank. And if you look at it, look at that. Not a scratch from a toe clip strap or anything. I debated on not taking these apart, but you know what? I got this oil. It's kind of yellowed. So we're going to take this apart, clean it up, and put it back together. Most of these chainring bolts are 5mm. Pretty tight. I don't think I've ever worked on a bike this clean. I'm just going to use the clean streak to get rid of the yellowing, which is basically old oil. Now, you might have to scrub a little bit more on your bike, which is fine. You might even use the mother's chrome polish on the aluminum. It would bring the sheen right back, usually, and make it nice and shiny. But actually, now that this stuff's on there, I'm taking quite a bit of old oil off, I could tell. Now I was able to get most of the yellow off, but not all of it. Looks pretty good. For an old bike, it looks fantastic. But you guys know I'm a little spoiled when it comes down to finding these garage queens. I call them garage queens because they sit in the garage or they sit in the basement and they haven't seen much mileage. Keep in mind your chainring bolts sit in this little groove here. If it's flat, you probably got it wrong. So in this particular case, we'll put the 52 right here, right behind the crank. It really doesn't matter, guys. But some people are sticklers about that. And I get it. People like symmetrical things. Make sure you get these snugged up. Sometimes you have to hold on to this in the back. I can't find my little tool that goes in there. And so if you have a problem with this spinning, you know, you could put something in there to key it in, but it could be tricky. These are sticking really well. I do have a little bit of lubricant on the bolt and the washer. Take our 14mm crank wrench, or you can use a thin wall socket and tighten her down. For those who need a torque spec, I'll put the graphic on the screen. Been doing this so long, I firm it up, give it a couple grunts, and we're good. After I do a couple rides, I'll tighten it again. Well, guys, I had to come to Millwright Cyclery to get this puller. First generation Derailleur didn't have one. They had one with very little wear, as you can tell. So I'm grateful for them. Oh, there's nothing to it. Look at that. Comes right off. Oh, there we go. -1 dork disc. Now on your bicycle, you have to look at the brand Freewheel you have. You see some notches here, and there's different Freewheels. There's different tools needed. This is a Suntour puller, 2 notches, fit right in, and away you go. Some of the Shimanos are round. Some have cassettes. There's different ones. If you don't have the tool to remove it, you can go to your local bike shop. To start, we're going to use an axle vise. This is necessary so you could put the wheel in there without ruining the threads. This is a soft lead. Works really well. Start by putting the wheel in. We're going to clamp it down. Even though it protects the threads, you don't have to go too tightly. Now for your axle, you're going to have a lower cone. This particular one takes a 14mm wrench, and your top one just happens to take a 14 as well. We'll hold on to the bottom one firmly and crack the top one loose. And oh my gosh, this one's on there pretty good. I'm going to try another way. I'm going to do like this. I'll squeeze this together. There we go. That did it. So we'll loosen the top. Oh, nice and smooth. Yours might be a little rougher, a little dirtier. Then you have your washer, keyed. Then you have the actual cone that the bearing runs on. Inside this rear hub, there's probably 1/4-inch bearings. They're probably loose. Probably no cage holding them in. I'm going to lift this wheel up anyway and see if they all fall out. Like the cone just did. Okay, here we go. Ready? Off it comes. We are going to start by removing the dust cap here. I use a regular screwdriver. Pops right off. I'm going to let all the bearings fall in the axle, or in the hole, I should say, in the hub. Here we go. I already did the other side off camera. Let's see what we got here. Looks like we got ourselves some grease. It's not very dirty, like I said. There's not a lot of moss on this bike. Let's clean that baby out. This is cleaning up really easy. Whenever I could avoid using harsh chemicals, I will. I would say if yours is really ground in there, get some degreaser. I had somebody comment on my last video. I was wiping down the bicycle after bike polish with my paper towels. And someone said, would you ever do that to your car? Or would you use a microfiber? I'm like, ugh, great point. So if you made that comment, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, the bearings themselves are going to clean up really, really easy. I'm just going to roll them around on this paper towel. Yours may need some degreaser. Now, if yours are older and worn, these are old but not worn, replace them. They're pretty cheap. In this particular case, it's a 1/4 inch bearing. If you don't have one of these tools, this is a good tool to have. This is a Park spoke ruler. And as you see here, 1/4 inch drops right in. And if you don't know, just bring the ball bearing to your local bike shop and they'll have them for you. Always make a point of checking your bearing surfaces to make sure they're not pitted. This particular one is extremely smooth. Very high quality, first generation Derailleur. Let's just clean up the other side here. This thing really is a cream puff, guys. I should have chosen a different bike to do this video on. But you still learn what you still learn though. Doesn't matter. Clean or dirty, you're still learning. The dust cap is also full of grease. Some people use a screwdriver to kind of like scoop that out, which I might end up doing. Now, some people would say use rubber gloves and use a solvent. I would agree with that. Unfortunately, I don't always follow my own suggestions. Now, in these particular wheels, they're not really cruddy or crusty, but now's a good time to get these cleaned up before you rebuild them. You can clean off the threads, you get all the crud out of here. Now, what I'm going to use is some brake clean, or also known as clean streak. Same thing as brake clean for a car. And it's going to get rid of the yellowing and some of the garbage that's in there. And we're going to do that before we put this back together. Yeah, that is eliminating a lot of that yellowing from the oil. It's just aged, lubricant. That's all it is. In this particular one, yours might have dirt and grime from hours and hours of riding. This one does not. Now, I'm going to polish the inside of the hub and get the axle in, and I can run a rag through it. Now, for reassembling, we're going to start with some grease. And I'm fairly generous with this. The reason why is this grease has to hold the bearings in while I'm putting this thing back together. And make sure you get a little grease also on your Freewheel threads. Now, a lot of people look pretty classy. Will use a tweezer to do this. I can't find my tweezer. Already lost one. See, not enough grease. Look at that. Now we got all the bearings in there. I'm going to put a little more grease in the top here. Almost just like to glue them in so they don't come off. Because once I put that dust cap on, it's no fun getting that bearing into place. So let's take the erase, put it in there, make sure she runs smooth. Got our clean dust cap, put that on. This might take a little bit of pressure. Got it in there a bit. All right. Looks like it snapped. I'm gonna just gently tap with a mallet. Don't hit it hard. Then you feel around, make sure that it's smooth between here and the side of the hub, or at least an equal distance. Take your axle, drop it in. Once again, make sure it runs smooth. Grab it from the other side. I'm gonna put it right back into the axle vise where we started. And we're gonna do the same on the other side. Actually gonna roll the grease in a little bit. Some people might say, hey, John, you're using too much grease. And I'd say, hey, I don't care. We'll just drop them in. We got 9 bearings on this side as well. Hey, that other dust cap is pretty tight. Let's see if I can put that on right here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's snapping right in. Let's take the race. Don't forget your key washer. Essential. This here will lock it down. Now, the adjustment on your bearing is critical. Make sure you lock, on one side, you lock the cone and your lock nut together. Make sure it's tight. Then, you're going to do your adjustments from the other side. I'm going to do this on the bench. And the way this works, to properly have it done, is you're gonna make it so it rolls smooth. You don't feel it binding. And believe it or not, I mean, you got to be good. Just a hair of play. I'm just talking a smidgen of free play, because when you lock that quick release down, that's going to change your adjustment, and it's minuscule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do that. I'm going to adjust it so it's slightly loose. Then I'm going to put it in the frame and see if there's any jiggle. So it's a fine-tuning act. Some people would say, no, you don't want that free play. It's not going to adjust it too much, or it's not going to tighten it. It just does. And you don't feel it because it's on the bike. So yeah, let's do that. And by the way, if you've done it a million times, you've done it only once. This may take 3 or 4 tries. So I'm going to lock them together. Take it out. It actually feels just a smidge tight. I'm talking a smidge. So once again, take my 14 on the bottom, 14 on the top. I'm going to loosen the top. Loosen the bottom just a hair. Then I snug them up again. Now after that second adjustment, it's smooth as glass. And I just feel it like it's like a bump. Ding, 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 ding. But it's so subtle. Let's put it on the bike and see how it looks. Right off camera, I adjusted the quick release so it'd be the right length. So we're going to tighten that up. Roll it. Now here's the test. Is there any free play? I'm going to knock on it a little bit. Just feel it subtly. I don't feel any free play. I feel like that could roll for hours. Yeah, nice and quiet, nice and silent. And no free play. I think we're in good shape. Now guys, the front wheel is identical to the rear. It's actually easier. You don't have to pull the free wheel off. I'm going to do this off camera to shorten the video a little bit and spare you the boredom of seeing the same process twice. I'm going to polish up the rims here, guys, and I'm going to do it with the tires on. I recommend you do it with the tires off. The reason why I'm doing it with the tires on is because these things are dry rotted and they're old, and I want to keep them original since I'm not riding this bike, which is also a shame. If you just happen to have a 23-inch Schwinn Volare in mint condition, I'll trade you straight up if you want a 21, or if you have one to sell. And then I'll buy it and I'll sell this one and have one I could actually ride. This is just too small for me. But yeah, it shines up really well. Well, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this cog. It's not very dirty. There is some dirt in there. But I'm going to show you, for the sake of this video, how to take it apart and clean the sprockets. We're not going to take apart the Freewheel body, however. To do this, first thing you're going to need is an axle vise. You take your Freewheel, put it on one side, put it in the other, squeeze that together. After that, you're going to put her in the vise. Give it a squeeze. Next thing we're going to do is take a chain whip. And now that the sprocket is secured, we're going to take off one sprocket at a time. Some will screw off and some will just come right off. So put that on there. Make sure it's there. Grip it firmly. And this one will go off nice and easy because there's probably no miles. Now be really careful. There's often spacers between the Freewheel cogs, and sometimes there isn't. In this particular case, there isn't between this one. Take the second one off. Get it nice and smooth. Might take a little more work for you. All right, let's look for a spacer between the third. No, but look at that. That's not screwed on. This one, here's your next spacer. Your first spacer. Cog number 4. And then you got to loosen it. There you go. spacer, pack number 5, and your Freewheel body. I'm pretty experienced at this, but you'll see that I laid them out exactly how they came off. I didn't flip them over or anything. You know, can you flip it over and use it? Maybe. But you know, each Freewheel is different. Just lay it out the way you took it off. Upon further inspection, I can tell these things are pretty greased up. I'm going to use some of my favorite stuff. That's the Clean Streak. And we're going to get the crud off. Yeah, it just wipes right off with that. Ooh, it's going to be shiny gold. You know how I feel about shiny gold. You know I like bling. And we're going to have more bling. And I wonder how much of the gold I'm actually taking off. And how much that is on my fingers. So, there we go. I'm going to flip it over. This particular one, I can see the difference in the teeth. This is flat. This is more rounded. So, just got to remember which way is which. Yeah, you can actually see that it was pretty cruddy. And all that is leftover oil from the chain. It wasn't even dirty. Cleans up really easy in this case. Either way, you're making room for new dirt. All right, we're done cleaning it up. Now it's time for reassembly. And just go on the same way it came off. In this particular case, sharp edges is up top. The rounded section of the teeth is more beveled, is on the bottom. That spacer, our second one. This is an old Derailleur. If you have different brands, you got to be careful. Sometimes there's specific places they go in, especially if you have a cassette. But that's a story for another day. Here we go. Put it in the vise yet until I get this first screw-on one on. Now it holds together. Have it back in the vise. I'm just going to snug this one down. And the first time you pedal this, someone actually might feel that snug up a little bit more. And we have our last one. Once again, no spacers. Just an old 5-speed. Here we go. Snug that one up as well. And she clean. Well, the wheel's out of True. This is the front wheel. I'm going to polish it up, but before I do that, I'm going to true it. Well, guys, when it comes to doing how-to videos, I'm somewhat of a novice. I do lifestyle videos, you know, interviewing people, overhauling bikes, and, you know, just kind of getting bikes, cleaning them up, that kind of thing. Truing wheels is a whole different video, guys. That's an art, and it took many years for me to perfect it and others that do it. I could give you a general concept, which I'll do here today, and that's it. I can't do a whole tutorial because I don't know if I'd be able to rotate that well. But we'll start. We'll try to educate you as best I can. Now, as you know, you have spokes. You have 36 of them in this case. 18 go to this side of the hub. 18 go to the other side. Now the basic concept is if you tighten a spoke that goes to that side of the hub, it pulls the wheel that way. If you tighten a spoke that goes to this side of the hub, it goes that way. But whenever you tighten and loosen any spoke, adjust the rim up and down. It's a balancing act. So when you might think if you loosen the spoke, you're only loosening the spoke, but you're not. You're loosening every single spoke. Proportionally, you're loosening this one more. But so it's kind of a balancing act. So what you do is generally work on the side-to-side play first, or the up and down trueness first, depending on what's worse. In this particular case, let's give it a spin, see what we got here. I think most of it's just side to side. So what I'm going to do, well, this is really hard to show, isn't it? Get the right size spoke wrench. I think it's a red. Yeah, red will do it. And I'm going to loosen this thing. I'm going to loosen it out to a point where it just barely touches. See that knocking noise? It's like doink, doink. Well, I'm going to tighten the spoke going to the left. And I'm going to do the one behind it. Try again. Yeah, there's a lot of movement in this one. It's going to be hard to explain. I don't know if I'm going to be really good at this. So, you get rid of the biggest curves first, then you fine tune it. Also, when you loosen spokes on this side, it causes the wheel to go that way. Works both ways. So if you need the wheel to go to the left, and you tighten the left-hand spoke, and it's too tight, it's a good chance that the one on the other side is too tight also. And if the rim's bent, all bets are off. This is not a wheel truing how-to video. I won't be able to do that for you. Now we're going to install the Freewheel back onto the hub. Make sure you put a little bit of grease on the threads. In this particular case, I'm not putting the dork disc back on. We're going to take your Freewheel, just thread it on. Do it very gently, guys. If you cross-thread this, you're out of a set of hubs. There you go. And nobody's surprised, this baby cleaned up really, really well. She's pretty. And for the sake of bling, we're going to clean these up as well. We're going to take them apart. Use a clean streak to get the oil off. And there's a little cam in there I'll show you. We're going to put a little bit of grease on again. This particular one is an 8mm. There should be a washer. Yep. Take that apart. There's your little cam surface. And your cap. That's about it. Just clean it up. And once again, not a lot of scotch on this, just a lot of old oil, just aged to perfection. Underneath that is a lot of shiny chrome. I love these old Shimano levers. I'll put a little grease on here. Water's going to get to it. I don't want it to corrode over time. Put the cap over it. And you got this piece here. Now this has like a little cam mechanism on it. And again, just a tiny bit of grease on the cam, because that'll make it go on and off much easier. Just stick that in there. Runs nice and smooth. You got this mini washer here, the lock washer, and the nut. All right, the wheel turned out perfect, nice and shiny. Overhauled. Put her on there. Pretty. Hey guys, we're back at the shop. We got our tape. We got some new balms. Guys, this is good stuff. I like because it's flexible. It's easier to use. We got some hoods. Replacement hoods. Now, these are not the exact first generation Derailleur hoods. I'm having a hard time finding them, but they're going to work. Well, let's put the handlebars and stem back on and get that old tape off the handlebars. First, we're going to start by getting rid of this reflector and properly lubing the wedge here. All right, this is pretty simple. I'm just going to loosen this. Should go pretty quick. It'll loosen up the stem as well. And let's put it right back on. Now you can see this key's right in. So now to tighten this up, I have to go around to the other side. The way this wedge works is when you tighten up the stem, this gets pushed up and it wedges within the fork. All we're going to do is add some lubricant to the threads, to the tapers, a little bit to the outside. Put some on the threads. Now we'll put some on the taper. Just regular Parker grease or whatever kind of grease you're using. And it doesn't show I'm putting a lot on there, but there we go. We'll put some on the stem itself. Just a very light coating there. That just keeps it from sticking inside. Let's put the wedge back on. So all I'm going to do is thread this on a little bit, not too tight. I'm going to drop this into the bike. There we go. And I don't care if it's centered yet because we're not worried about that. We're just securing it for a second here. tighten up the bars a little bit. Now this is original tape, not in horrendous shape, but in order to get the new hoods on that were all dilapidated, we have to take this all off and put it all back together. This is one of those vintage cat eye plugs, and they're actually hard to come by now, so I like to hold on to them. Well, that baby's in there, isn't it? It's tight. Come on. There we go. Sometimes you got to pry out the edge of the tape here. Here we go. Find the end, and away you go. Now, that's some old sticky there. Hopefully you have some old adhesive remover to get that off. Oh, this is real. This is super sticky. I don't think I've ever had tape come off this difficult before. Huh. Crazy. A lot of times it's so brittle it just breaks. Whew! That was a lot of work. Now this side I have a better way. See that? Much quicker. I have some 3M general purpose adhesive remover. Be careful not to get this on the bike. It smells like crap. It's taking away the sticky, but not getting rid of the residue. So let's make it, let's spray it and let it sit for a bit. Actually, I'm finding that a microfiber is doing a better job after letting the product sit just for a little bit. It's working. Look at this, guys, there's boogers all over the rag. All right, I got that looking nice and pretty. What do? Let's start out with the drivetrain. We got ourselves a pretty rare derailleur. This is the Shimano crane. They renamed this the Durace rear derailleur, I believe, in subsequent years. Doesn't need a lot, like I said, but we're gonna take this thing apart and, you know, put a little polish on it and put it back together. And the front derailleur actually is labeled Durace. Just needs a little cleanup. Not much, obviously, it's just a little shine. Let's start out with the 8mm. Yeah, a little bit of dirt and grime. Not much. Now your pulleys consist of a cap on both sides, and then usually the centerpiece that it rolls on. You just have to make sure they're clean, and I put a light lubricant on them, like an oil. As you can see, these are not very worn. Just going to clean them up a little bit. Use a little bit of degreaser. Doesn't need a lot. Like I said, this is not very caked on. It's almost like I'm dusting this one. But yeah, there's a little bit of grease on there. Then I'll wipe down the pulley, innards of the pulley. What do you call this thing that the pulley rides on? The sheath? I don't know. Even these caps are pretty darn clean too. Once again, no cleaner on this one, but some people use a degreaser or polish of some kind. You can, but these things are running so smooth. Now, if you look at this, it's not messy. It's just got that yellow hue to it because it's just old oil. So we're going to take, much to your chagrin, some of you guys don't like this stuff. It's a brake clean, also known as Clean Streak. And we're just going to spray it down a little bit. I'm going to let it sit, and then I'm going to wipe it off. All right, let's see how this stuff does. Oh yeah, what's that mark on there? It looks like something hit it. We're just going to take off all this. Hopefully this yellowing kind of old oil is really what it boils down to. Yeah, it's cleaning right up. And normally I would take like a bike polish to these parts, but you know what? It's naturally shiny right now. And I think it'd be pretty unreal if I did that. But yeah, the thing is really in good shape. We got some of that yellowing again. Try to get that off. All right, look at it, it's coming off. It's working. Some of you guys wonder why I'm so obsessed with things being clean and blingy. I don't have an answer for that. Some people like a natural patina, you know, on an aged patina, and I totally get it. I totally get it, guys. It's each to their own. I would never knock that. Some people prefer it, and I totally get it. I'm such a nerd. I had some comments from the previous video saying that I should keep the reflectors on as well as the dork disc because, you know, it's part of the bike and it's part of the history. And since this bike's so pristine, we should keep it, you know, stock. It's not about, you know, making it look sharper without those items. What do you guys think? Put it in the comment section below. What should I do? This thing looks just fine. Let's put her together. Just going to put a little dab of Finish Line dry lubricant on. Drop that in there. Top cap. Bottom cap. One bolt in here. We'll drop that on. If you ever wonder, it's harder to overhaul a bicycle on camera. Here we go. It's actually pretty tight. There we go. Let's take the other one. Put that together. Just slide that in there. This particular one just goes in and threads into the cage. Sometimes you'll have a nut on the other side. I don't have that. Looks like we're all set. I put a tiny bit of grease here, just a tiny bit. And we'll put her on. All right, we're in good shape. As you can see, the front derailleur is pretty darn clean. I'm going to clean this up a little bit here. And just put her back on the bike. There's a little bit of yellowing. I'll hit it once with a rag and some of the degreaser, but for the most part, it's perfect. A little bit of chrome polish, honestly, not a lot. You barely see it. Oh yeah, there we go. There's some shine. Now, when you're installing the front derailleur, there's a couple of crucial things. One is the height of the derailleur, and the other one is the angle in which it sits. Some say the height should be about a 1/16 of an inch to an 1/8 of an inch over the top chainring. So we'll give that a shot. Now looking at the height of the front derailleur, there's between a 1/16 and an 1/8 inch here. And guys, that could vary. And if you have something called biopace, make sure this is the highest part of your chainring. Also make sure that your front derailleur cage is parallel to the chainring. Now as you tighten this, pay attention because that could change the adjustment a little bit in terms of the angle. So after you tighten it, check your angle again. Hey guys, there's no right or wrong way to go about this. What I like to do is I like to, clean up all the parts, hang them back on the bike, then I'll string it up. So when I'm done with the brakes, what I'll do is I'll put the new hoods on, we'll tape it up, show you how to tape some bars. Hey guys, I have here a pair of Derailleur's first generation brakes. Huh, now that I say that, is that the truth? I know there are some Derailleur's center pulls. Was that the first generation? I'm not sure. But what we're going to do is we're going to take these apart. This is kind of funny. Still have this little rubber piece on here. We're going to take these apart, put them back together after a little shine. Now, these look pretty good. Why would I do that? Well, they have not been apart in 40 years. So let's do that. I'm going to start with a quick release. I got my 10 millimeter in the back. I'll hold it out with my finger. Then I have an 8 millimeter here. All right, here we go. Knock, knock. Looks like she's loose. Here we go. Got that bolt. And then you got the quick release. Another thing you can do is not take apart the other brake until you get this one back together, just in case you get confused. Here is a 13 millimeter flatty. Brake wrench, whatever you want to call it. Put that back here on the nut. 10 millimeter on the top. And God, these guys are locked together. All right, let's try this. These are really tight, guys. Out of all the things that's tight on this bike, it's the brakes. How weird is that? Let's try this. There we go. Once you knock them loose, you're in good shape. But remember, keep the parts in order. You got your top nut, your lock nut, your adjustable nut. Before I loosen that totally, I'm going to loosen the spring. You got your spring back here, and we're going to unhook that. There we go. All right, let's do the 13 millimeter adjustable nut here. Of all the things, this should spin right off, but it doesn't. There we go. Now we got it. So it does need to be cleaned up. You should have a washer here. And your top caliper. In between the calipers, you have this little thin washer. Your other caliper. And then you have another thin washer. Your spring. Now, as you can see, these brake shoes are in really good shape. Probably a little bit hard. I spoke too soon. They actually feel pretty good. This has been a temperature controlled place forever. Anyways, they look pretty clean. I'm just going to wipe them down. And the calipers themselves, I'm going to wipe down. This has a very satin sheen, so I'm not going to put a polish on it. Like if this was a dye comp or Camping Yellow, I may even consider putting a polish on it. Yeah, it didn't need much. These are gorgeous. Man, when I was a kid, I dreamt of having these brakes. Maybe that's why I collect all this stuff, you know? What are collectors? Collectors are guys that buy everything they wish they could have bought when they were younger and couldn't afford it. That's probably who I am. I think a lot of collectors are that way. You long to have this stuff, and you couldn't afford it. So now that you can, you start buying it all. I don't know if that's healthy or not, guys. But at the end of the day, you know what's important. You know this is just stuff. Not important. Doesn't change your life. It does add maybe a little bit of fun, a little bit of temporal happiness. But at the same time, like I said, it's just temporary. It's just stuff. If we take this stuff too seriously, we're doing something wrong. There you go. Everything just needs a wipe down in this one. Everything's in great shape. When it comes to the spring, make sure that's clean. I'll show you how to lubricate this spring when we put it back on to keep your brakes from creaking. You notice I didn't say squeaking, I said creaking. So yeah, these are a nice chrome. They're not all nice and chrome, but this is Durace. It's shiny and fancy. In this particular brake, it looks like your two washers are the same. The one that goes in the back next to the spring, the one between the calipers. Then you have a thicker one that goes in front. Don't mix those up. Now the quick release looks pretty good, but I'm going to make room for new dirt here and use a little bit of chrome polish to shine that up. All right, that's looking a lot better. Not that this is critical or crucial to do. You know, all it does is it makes room for new dirt. Makes room for more dirt to accumulate for a later date. I just love these barrel adjusters. They're so ornate because they're chrome. That's what makes them kind of cool. You know, they could have made them lighter, that's for sure. The stupid barrel adjuster weighs a lot. But who cares? Oh, look at that. Put in the comment section, how far do you go in polishing your bikes? Now for reassembly, I'm going to take some finish line dry. Watch this. I'm going to put a little, just a dab on the counter. And I'm going to start with my center bolt. I dab my finger in it. I give it a little bit of lube. It's so little. Actually put a tiny bit of oil in here too. Take my spring, put that on, and look at that. That's backwards. Knew that was going to happen. Put it back on. It flips right over pretty easy. You can tell it's right because the flats are towards the caliper. Then I'm going to start with my thin washer. Dab a little bit of oil on it, just a tiny bit. Then we'll put the caliper on. And I'm not going to hook up the spring yet. No reason to. Take the other thin washer, tiny bit of lube, then the top caliper. Ta-dum. Take the thin washer, the thick washer up on top. Check both sides. Sometimes the one side is serrated. This looks like one side is rounded here. So I'll put the flat side down. Take your adjusting nut. Now here, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil, just like I said, you can barely see it on the threads. And sure enough, that should go on pretty good. Oh yeah, much better than when it came off. Then I'm going to put the lock nut on. Ta-da! Now let's hook up the spring. Actually, before I hook up the spring, I'm going to adjust the tension. Like a hub, you want this to move freely, but you don't want any free play back and forth. When you lock these two together, it will ultimately change the adjustment to be slightly tighter. So right now, I feel a little bit of free play, like ding, 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 ding. You can't see it or hear it, so I'm doing the sound effects for you. Take my 13, take my 10, I'll lock the two together, kind of tight. All right, no free play. They're actually a little bit sticky, just a hair. Kind of like a hub. Loosen the top, loosen the bottom of the hair, and tighten together again. Now they flow freely, and I don't have any free play. Cool. So then we want to put the springs back on. This spring rubs right here. I'm going to take just a dab of grease, put it on the surface, just a hair, just a tiny bit. Oh, look at that. I put it on too low, didn't I? Put it on too low. So I'm going to put it where it belongs, right here. Then I'll do the same on the other side. There you go. All right, for the quick release, I'm actually going to take a little bit of light oil, put it on both sides. Once again, it's minuscule, guys. It really is. Some people would say to do more, but I don't think you need it. Put that in there. Put my nut in from the other side. Then I'll put my washer on. And then the nut. Make sure you drop the nut into the grease. Cut. All right, we're back. Had to get the grease off the nut. Do with that what you will. All right, then I'll tighten these two together. There we go. Nice. Don't forget the pinch bolt. Put that in there. That keys nicely, just like that. And we got the nut. Finito. I'll do the rear brake off camera.
We got our curved spacer, our washer, and then our nut. All right, for the front brake, we have our curved spacer, our other curved spacer, our washer, and our 10mm nut.
Snugged it up pretty good. Now, when it comes to cleaning up your drivetrain parts and components, a lot of people would suggest you buy an ultrasonic cleaner. I do intend on buying one. I never had one. I do actually have this old Harbor Freight parts cleaner thingamajigger. I put some solvent in, and it was just messy and smelled, and forget about it. So what you can do with your chain is use some degreaser. You get some citrus degreaser. Park has this citrus chain bright, which works pretty well. You could use the Clean Streak. You guys think I'm sponsored, but I'm not. But by the way, I'm taking someone's suggestion. I forgot who it was who commented. I think there's a bunch of you that I should be wearing rubber gloves when I use that stuff. And you know what? I'm going to take that advice. I'm going to do that because I really should. So this chain is relatively clean. So what I'm going to do is actually very clean. I'm just going to lubricate it and wipe it down. But I would recommend soaking yours, getting a degreaser, and wipe it off with a towel, or blow it off with some compressed air. This, I'm just going to lubricate. I'm actually going to use some Tri-Flow. Everyone's got their favorite. You can tell I'm a little bit old school. There's so many newer things on the market. Some people could like to use a paraffin. Yeah, that's a thing. Waxing your chain is a thing. Actually, a lot of people really like doing that. And it takes a little bit of maintenance. But it's not a bad way to go. This chain is basically new. It's crazy. It's a Shimano Uniglide. Beautiful, beautiful condition. While we're putting this chain on, let's talk a little bit about chain wear. There's this tool here. I'll show it to you here. And that'll determine whether or not your chain is stretched. And then I'll show you how to show if it's worn. You see if there's free play side to side. But if your chain is really stretched and it's and the tool shows it, not only do you need a new chain, you might actually need a new cog, because the chain and the sprockets sometimes wear together, and especially if you use the smaller sprockets in the back, too much. Now the trick putting this back in is not to push the pin too far. The Shimano Uniglide chain has a special tool back in the day, the Uniglide chain tool. I own one. It just happens to be at the garage, and I want to get this done, so this is working just fine. All right. After you install your chain, you'll probably have a stiff link. You grab it on both sides, and you shake it side to side. You fold the link up like this, do the same, fold it down, do the same. Now it's moving freely. Another way you could tell if a chain is worn, if it flows side to side way too easy. I'm sorry, I don't have a measurement for that. If you guys someone want to put that in the comment section, that'd be fine. Whatever you guys suggest there. There we go. Hey guys, it's time to tape the bars. Now I'm using New Balance tape, which has actually become one of my favorites. Normally I would look for the vintage cloth like the Cat Eye or something like that, Trestle Star. It's not as flexible. When I start putting this on, you'll notice how flexible this stuff is. Let's start by taking out the brake lever. In this particular case, it's an 8mm wrench. A lot of times it's a screwdriver or an Allen wrench. I still got the sticky stuff. These levers are in wonderful condition. We're going to put on these hoods. These are actually the Shimano 600. But yeah, I was told by some place in Poland they'll fit. Let's give it a shot. All right, I start with some hot water with some soap, a little bit of Dawn detergent. Why? The hot water will soften up the hoods a little bit. Just a little bit of soap is going to make them slip on just that much easier. I keep this clamp on because what that does is it helps the hood slide in a little bit better. Okay, they've been sitting in there a couple minutes. I'll take this. Oh, this is too easy. Oh, too easy. This is going right on. No work at all. And actually, the fit's pretty good. Now, those of you who've been watching the channel see me do this before. And this is probably the easiest this has ever gone on. So, yeah, I'll dry those off and put them on. All right, start by putting the levers on here. Slide up pretty simple, pretty easy. Good rule of thumb is you put a flat edge here and your lever should touch right there. Pretty good rule of thumb. Should get you there most times. Let's start by folding up the hoods. Hopefully these are not brittle and they don't rip. Oh, look at that. I don't want to. Now, before we start taping the bars, normally what I would do is I would, ask you to fold up these gum hoods, and you just peel them back and you'll be able to fold them up. Unless they're really old and brittle, then you got to be careful or have some spare hoods with you. Now, these are repop Shimano hoods, and I can't get them to fold up, which, whatever. But also kind of peculiar. Watch this. Normally you can't do that. Normally fold them up. Anyways, time to start taping. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a couple strips. Looks like, 3.5 inches long. We'll do 2 of those. Now this is cloth tape. If this was like a new vinyl tape or something, it probably has these strips already done for you. We're going to start out by putting a strip just like this. And what that's going to do is when we get here, you'll see this is going to cover a little triangle gap that will occur. And this brand tape, we actually have a backing. Now we're going to start at the top here. And here's your taper. In this particular bar, sometimes there's like a little ledge, because there's like a sheath or a collar. So here we go. And to make it look nice, make sure you cover the gaps here. And then you're going to go around. And I would say you cover it an 1/8 inch, maybe a little bit more. 1/8 inch is probably fine. And as you can see, this tape is rather flexible, as is the vinyl tape. So it should go around pretty easily. Of course, you're going to have more overlap here than you will here. Now, you'll say, why do you start at the top? I don't always. If I'm using a cello tape or plastic tape, like the vintage stuff, if I use cloth, I'm always starting at the top. Doesn't mean you have to. I just prefer to. And then you'll put a cap when you get down to the bottom here. And I get the best results. This stuff doesn't fold over like the vinyl stuff up has on top. I've been taping like this way for years. I have several bikes with cloth tape. It lasts and works just fine. Now, when you get to this juncture here, your main goal is to make sure you don't have gaps. Now, because this is a vintage hood and it's very narrow, I'm actually going to do a wrap around here as well to kind of make it thicker. Watch this. So I'll go over the top. That covers this gap. Then I'm going to come around like this. Then I'm going to come around under this way. So therefore, you got this end of the triangle done. Then I'll come over the top like this. My last gap is right here. From there, I'll just continue my way down the bar. Now over the last, I don't know, 42 years or so, I may have done this, 1,000 times. I'm not exaggerating. I used to work at a Schwinn store. And so it looks kind of easy. Just make sure that as you're going around, you're eliminating wrinkles in the tape. And sometimes that takes a little finesse. Now you're at the end. You're going to have some overlap here. It starts about here and goes around. I'll, cut off, I'll leave a couple inches. In this case, I'll take it in. I'll fold it in like this. Put in your bar cap. That would need a little bit of manipulation. Here we go. Like I said, this doesn't normally work, but in this case it did. Because they're aftermarket hoods. Nice and clean and pretty. All right, with the cockpit done, looks cool. Looks like a bike. What do we do next? How about pedals? This one already took the toe clip and strap off. As you can see, this was rotted horribly. I mean, there's nothing right about this. It's backwards. You know, they totally skipped going through the pedal. Let's fix these up. Well, put down in the comments section below what I should do. Should I put these reflectors back on or not? I'm going to take them off for the video, but I have those. I have the front and rear reflector as well. And I don't know. I think it looks better without the reflectors, but being that this is really a stock, like almost an old stock bicycle, I'm very tempted to put them back on. I just think it looks dorky. And the dork disc as well, by the way. I guess it looks, that's why they call it a dork disc. I am back with the clean streak because we got some major yellowing here just from oil. You put that on there. Note the gloves, guys. I'm learning my lesson. A couple of you guys have been kind of beating me up a little bit about that, and that's okay. I kind of deserve it. These pedals run smooth as glass, but I'm going to check the grease. They weren't too tight. Yeah, I really don't want to take these apart. They're so smooth. I think I'll just add a tiny bit of grease. A little bit of fill wood. Fill wood wouldn't hurt anybody. While we're at it, let's polish up the dust cap. I'm going to try a little polish. Ooh, it's a little dull here. So we'll see what this does. Oh yeah, a lot better. Now looking at the toe clips, I can use a little help too. Not to get too picky with how this stuff looks, but you know, there's always a time to make new dirt. Yeah, much better, much cleaner. All right, let's put the toe clips back on. Just a couple screws, fairly basic. Now the correct way to put on a toe clip strap. Take this in there, like so. Pull it through with a plier. I usually go all the way in. I like my buckle to be on the outside, even though I'm not going to ride this bike. Then I'm going to do a full 360 twist. That's so it doesn't slide back and forth. Put it in there. Once again, for the sake of easiness, I'm going to have to pull it through. And be careful a little bit here. There we go. So you get your full twist. And this, put it on the inside. Like that. Like that. And like this. Pretty. Start with a little bit of grease on the threads. On this particular pedal, there's a 6mm in the back. Remember, over the top towards the front to tighten, over the top towards the back to loosen. Now, there we go. So see how your spring is keyed into this center bolt here? What you're actually doing is you're moving the whole brake like this. To center the brake, you're actually moving the spring by moving the center pivot bolt. So by having a wrench in the back and having a wrench in the front, you're doing that. And when you get it where you want it, snug up the back while holding on to the front. Because if you don't, then your adjustment won't stay. Hope I explained that well enough. Now when you're adjusting a brake, the first thing I like to do normally is adjust these bolts to make sure there's no free play. Now we did that in the last episode. So these run freely and there's no free play. Second thing I like to do is aim up the shoes. Now I like to do that after I hook up the cable sometimes, as long as, because when you close it, you hook up the cable, get it adjusted, it's a lot easier to move the brake shoes around with the cable in. Then we also have to check the toe in. So I'm going to stick the cable through, and with these particular levers, I could stick the whole thing in, even the last ferrule here. And we just put the cable in, here we go. Now there's a ferrule in there. Normally you'd have an end ferrule. I'm going to put that through the pinch bolt, just like that. Well, I have a tool called a third hand. You can still pick these up around. Here we go. Very handy tool for keeping the brake shut while you make adjustments. So now this is an existing cable. It's already been stretched. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a couple threads showing here, and I'm going to tighten the cable down. Now at this point, I can release the third hand. Looks about right. We've got some space on one side, not the other. We just have to center the brake. So when you're centering a brake, we're going to kind of do a steering wheel motion. We're actually going to put one wrench on the back nut here. Now these are locked together. Then we're going to put another wrench on the back, 10mm nut, and we're going to turn it like a steering wheel. Well, it looks like we have to move it this way to center it. All right, here we go. And if it doesn't want to move, loosen the back bolt a little bit. Let's try this. Here we go. And once I get it to kind of where I want it, I'll tighten the bolt in the back. Wow, okay, that was too easy. Looks like it's moving equally on each side. Of course, make sure your front wheel is perfectly centered when you do it. So when you have to choose the length of your cable and how to run it, that's open to religious debate. Trust me, look in the comments section. It's gonna get fun. Anyways, I don't like them sitting too tall. Some people like a bigger swoop, some people don't. Some people say I should run this cable behind the handlebar because it's a more direct route. And they are absolutely right when they say that. However, myself, just maybe because I went to Schwinn Service School or whatever, I run them in front because when I'm riding, I don't like the cables in the way. I don't want them flopping around in the wind. Now, of course, you want to make sure that the bend isn't too quick here. I totally get that. But you know what? Hey, it's out of the way. It's shorter. It's not flopping around. I'm happy with that. If you want to differ, put it in the comments section because everyone else will. The biggest thing I get made fun of is by the way I run my cables, and that's okay. It doesn't bug me. You know, if I have a European bike, I'll probably run it the way you know, some of you guys want, over the top. Now, for the rear brake, I have a cable stop right here. So you can't run this thing the way many would suggest, over the top. It just won't happen. So it's gonna come here, and pretty basic. Let me show you. So the casing for the rear is going to go here and up and around. So make fun all you want. That's the way it's going. Little grease. And the only reason you need grease is because this is old-fashioned cable without the liner, the little nylon liner that you normally get nowadays. So vintage stuff requires vintage methods. All right, we're gonna center these puppies. Wrench on the front, wrench on the back. Turn it to where it's centered. Tighten the back. Give them a pull. Looks like I did good. While you're adjusting the height of the brake shoe, you do want to make sure that the shoe itself is like parallel with the curvature of the rim. Parallel with the curvature. Yeah, make sure it's equal, not turn like this or like that. Make sure the whole brake shoe hits and give it a snug. Now, when you tighten this, it might turn the shoe, so be careful. I also seen people go as far as putting a wrench on it like this as they tighten it. Now, as for the toe in, I don't know if this is going to be easy to film. As for the toe in, you always want the front of the brake shoe towards the front of the bike to touch before the rear. That eliminates brake squealing, unless you have crappy brake shoes, and you're still going to get brake squealing. Now, the way you do that is actually, because these bolts are tight, there's no free play here in the arm, you actually take an adjustable wrench and you actually flex it. It doesn't take much, so be really careful. To do that, sometimes you have to lower the shoe. Put the wrench on it, put the shoe back, and check. Well, guys, I am thrilled the way this bike turned out. We took this bike that was generally in good shape. We just did a little clean up work. We did eliminate the reflectors. I'll keep them with the bike at all times, however. We got some new hoods, tape. We rebuilt the shifters, cleaned those up, repacked the hubs, repacked the bottom bracket and the headset as well. We kind of cleaned up the chain. It wasn't really too dirty. We did clean up the cog, rebuild the rear hub. The one thing we didn't do that maybe I should do is rebuild that Freewheel, but there's no miles on it. This bike doesn't really have a blem, which is really crazy from 1978. Okay, I lied. There's one. And also there's a little bit of paint starvation here, but it's not a chip. As you can tell, it's chrome underneath. And what they did with these bikes is they would chrome the whole bike, polish the lug area, the fork, the stays, and then they would paint it. So it is paint over chrome. That's one way they get this beautiful finish. And oh, look at that. No big deal, but there's another tiny little flaw. And a lot of the Schwinn's were like that. Well, guys, she pretty. It really is. It wasn't a hard project because the bike is in great shape, but it really needed a once-over. Just turned out wonderful. Hey guys, that was a long one. Man, I'm not used to doing how-to videos, and that was a very long how-to video. Now, I actually broke it down to 4 different parts. It should have been 3, but it's 4, and I'll link those below. So thanks so much for joining us. If you're new to the channel, because you found me, by punching in how to do something, subscribe. It's not my usual thing. I rebuild bikes like this little Freewheel and this little Trek and that kind of thing. I do doing some what do you call it, neo retros. Where I take some cool old frames and put some newer parts on it, things like that. I interview people that are involved in the bike building business, people who, from the past, the frame builders that are still building, by the way. These guys are getting in their 60s and 70s, and they're at the peak of their careers. So, hey, thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next video.